I didn't mind being left alone during the snowstorm, at first. My parents had driven out to visit my grandmother, leaving me to watch over the house. I liked the quiet, and the storm outside only made it cozier. Wrapped in a blanket on the couch, I was half watching a horror movie on my laptop. It wasn't until the power went out that the night started feeling a little too quiet. "Perfect," I muttered, setting the laptop aside. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and started toward the kitchen to find a better light source. The flashlight beam flickered as I shuffled through the junk drawer. My hands finally found the big flashlight Dad kept for emergencies, and I clicked it on. The room was instantly brighter, but the shadows seemed darker too. I told myself it was just my imagination as I headed back to the couch. That's when I heard it, a loud thud from upstairs. I froze. My parents weren't home, and I was positive I was alone in the house. My first thought was that something fell. Maybe the wind rattled a window, knocking over a book or a picture frame. But the sound had been heavy, deliberate. Heart pounding, I slowly climbed the stairs, gripping the flashlight tightly. Each creak of the steps felt deafening. At the top, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. The door to my parents' bedroom was open. They always kept that door closed. I hesitated, but curiosity, or maybe stupidity, pushed me forward. The room was dark, the air colder than the rest of the house. My flashlight swept over the bed, the dresser, the mirror on the wall. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The window was wide open. Snow blew in, collecting on the carpet. I ran over and shut it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My parents wouldn't have left the window open in this weather. That's when I heard it. A creak. It came from behind me, out in the hallway. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hands. The hallway was empty, but the silence was deafening. "Hellos," I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. I stepped out of the bedroom, my feet barely making a sound on the carpet. The air felt heavier now, and I could swear I heard faint breathing, though I couldn't tell if it was mine or someone else's. The creaking started again, this time from the stairs. My breath caught as I realized the sound was moving. Someone was walking down to the first floor. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't cooperate. Every instinct screamed at me to stay quiet as I slowly made my way to the top of the staircase. That's when I saw him. A man in dark clothes was descending the steps, his back to me. My heart was in my throat as I watched him reach the bottom. He moved toward the back door, and for a moment, I thought he was leaving. But then he stopped. He turned and looked directly up at me. I didn't see his face. It was obscured by a hood and scarf, but I could feel his gaze, cold and piercing. My legs finally obeyed me, and I bolted back into my parents' room, slamming the door and locking it. My phone. It was downstairs on the couch. I pressed myself against the door, my mind racing. I could hear him moving again, his footsteps growing louder as he climbed the stairs. And then he knocked, soft at first. "Kelly," he whispered, dragging out my name. I covered my mouth to keep from screaming. How did he know my name? The knocking grew louder, more insistent. Kelly opened the door. "I just want to talk." Tears streamed down my face as I backed away from the door. The flashlight shook in my hand as I scanned the room for something, anything I could use as a weapon. The knocking stopped. Silence. I waited, my breath caught in my throat. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. Finally, I mustered the courage to approach the door. Pressing my ear against it, I listened. Nothing. Slowly, I unlocked the door and cracked it open, peeking into the hallway. It was empty, but then I saw them, wet footprints leading down the stairs. I crept down after them, my heart pounding in my ears. The footprints led to the back door, which was wide open, snow blowing in. I slammed it shut, bolting the lock. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. By the time the police arrived, the intruder was long gone. They searched the house but found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of anyone else being there. But I knew what I saw, and I knew I'd never feel safe in that house again.
I always hated the night shift, especially during snowstorms. Something about being alone in the library, with snow piling up against the windows and the wind howling outside, made me uneasy. The place was old, the kind of building that groaned and creaked constantly. It was just after midnight when I heard it, laughter. I froze, gripping the mop handle tighter. The sound was faint, distant, but unmistakable. My first thought was that someone had gotten inside. Maybe a couple of kids looking for trouble. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty halls. No response. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way toward the staircase leading to the second floor. The archives section was up there, rows of dusty shelves and forgotten books. It was always colder on the second floor, and tonight was no different. My breath fogged in the beam of the flashlight as I climbed the stairs. The laughter came again, louder this time. It was coming from the far end of the room. I stepped cautiously between the shelves, shining the light ahead of me. That's when I saw them. Two people, a man and a woman, stood at the far end of the room. The man was tall, with scraggly hair sticking out from beneath a beanie. The woman had a wild look in her eyes, her hair matted and unkempt. "Hey!" I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady. "The library's closed. You're not supposed to be here." The man turned slowly to face me, a lazy grin spreading across his face. "We didn't think you'd mind. Just taking a look around." "You can't be here," I said, gripping the flashlight tighter. "You need to leave. Now." The woman giggled, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. "We're not ready to leave yet," she said. "There's so much to see." My heart started pounding as the man took a step toward me. "Relax," he said. "We're not gonna hurt you, unless you make us." I backed away, trying to keep the beam of the flashlight on them. "Look, I'll call the police if you don't leave." The man's grin disappeared, replaced by a cold, hard stare. "No, you won't." The woman stepped closer, tilting her head as she studied me. "You look scared," she said, her voice soft and sing-song. "Are you scared?" I turned and bolted down the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the empty building. Behind me, I heard their laughter again, followed by the sound of them following me. Reaching the first floor, I ran to the front desk and grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight I kept there. It wasn't much, but it felt better than nothing. I ducked behind the counter, trying to catch my breath. The laughter stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming down the stairs. "Come out, little janitor," the woman called out. "We just want to talk." My hands were shaking as I held the flashlight like a club. I peeked over the counter and saw them at the bottom of the stairs, scanning the room. The man pulled out something from his pocket, a knife. The sight of it made my blood run cold. "You can't hide forever," he said, his voice low and calm. "We'll find you." I stayed as still as I could, trying to control my breathing. They started moving through the room, opening doors and checking behind shelves. I knew I had to get out of there. The emergency exit was on the other side of the building, but I'd have to move fast to reach it. When their backs were turned, I slipped out from behind the counter and darted down the hallway. I could hear them yelling behind me, their footsteps pounding against the floor. I reached the emergency exit and slammed into it, bursting out into the freezing night. The snowstorm hit me like a wall, but I didn't stop running. I didn't look back until I reached my car. The lot was empty. They hadn't followed me outside. As I sat there, trying to catch my breath, I saw movement at the library windows. The man and woman were standing there, watching me, their faces illuminated by the dim light inside. I didn't wait to see what they'd do next. I started the car and drove straight to the police station. They searched the library, but by the time they arrived, the intruders were gone. Nothing was stolen, but they found signs that someone had been living in the archives for weeks: blankets, food wrappers, even a small makeshift stove. I quit the job the next day. It had been snowing all day, and the world outside was buried in white. I love nights like this. The quiet was soothing, and the snow made everything feel softer, safer. I'd spent the evening curled up on the couch, a mug of hot cocoa in my hands, the marshmallows melting into sweet clouds. The lights were low, and a faint glow came from the fireplace. It was a peaceful evening, just me, the storm, and nothing to worry about. That changed when I glanced out the window. At first, I thought it was just the snow playing tricks on my eyes. But then I saw him, a shadowy figure moving in the yard next door, trudging through the drifts toward the Harper's house. My stomach twisted as I watched him crouch by one of their windows, glancing over his shoulder before pulling something from his pocket. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The guy was breaking in. I grabbed my phone, heart racing, and called 911. "There's someone breaking into my neighbor's house," I whispered, peeking out from behind the curtain. "I'm at 17, Maple Drive. It's the house next door, number 19. The operator's voice was calm. "Stay on the line with me. Officers are on their way." "Can you describe the person?" "It's dark, but he's wearing a black coat and hat. He's breaking the window now. Please hurry." As I spoke, the figure slipped inside, disappearing into the house. The Harpers were out of town, I knew that for sure. That meant he had free rein in there. I should have stayed put. But curiosity got the better of me. After throwing on my boots and jacket, I stepped into my backyard. Snow crunched beneath my feet as I walked toward the fence, trying to get a better look. That's when I heard the sirens. The guy must have heard them too because he came barreling out of the Harper's back door like a bat out of hell. I ducked behind the shed as he sprinted across the yard, his breath visible in the freezing air. He wasn't heading for the street. He was coming toward my house. "Ah, he's running." I hissed into the phone. "He's coming this way." "Stay hidden," the operator said firmly. "Officers are almost there." Before I could react, the man reached my patio. He didn't hesitate. With a loud crash, he smashed through my kitchen window and climbed inside. My blood ran cold. He was in my house. I backed away, my phone still pressed to my ear. "He's in my house. He broke through the window. Oh my God." "Stay calm," the operator said. "Find a safe place to hide. Officers are arriving now." I crept back to the sliding door and slipped inside, closing it as quietly as I could. The sound of glass crunching under boots echoed through the house. The man was moving through the kitchen, muttering to himself. I ducked into the laundry room and closed the door, locking it behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "He's in the kitchen," I whispered. "I'm hiding in the laundry room." "Officers are at your location," the operator said. "Stay where you are." A loud bang made me jump. He was throwing things, pots, pans, whatever he could find. I could hear him cursing, his voice growing louder as he moved through the house. The sirens were deafening now. Red and blue lights flashed through the curtains, painting the walls in bursts of color. "Come out," the man yelled. "I know you're in here." I pressed myself against the washer, trying to make myself as small as possible. My breath was coming in short, shallow gasps, and I was sure he'd hear me. Then came the sound of heavy boots, different ones. "Police! Come out with your hands up." The man shouted something I couldn't make out, followed by a loud crash. Then silence. "Sir," a voice called. "Are you in here?" I opened the door a crack and saw two officers standing in the hallway, guns drawn. "He's in the living room," one of them said into his radio. I stepped out, my knees wobbling. He's still in here?" One of the officers nodded toward the living room. "We've got him. He's not going anywhere." Relief flooded through me as I followed them to the front of the house. The man was face down on the floor, handcuffed, with two more officers standing over him. He was still cursing, thrashing against the restraints, but they had him under control. "Are you okay?" one of the officers asked, turning to me. I nodded, though my hands were still shaking. "Yeah. Just shaken up." They stayed for a while, taking my statement and boarding up the broken window. The man was loaded into the back of a squad car, still yelling as they drove off. By the time they left, the storm had started to let up. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel peaceful anymore. I made another cup of cocoa and sat by the fire, staring into the flames. I thought about how close he'd been, how easily things could have gone wrong. And as much as I wanted to convince myself it was over, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd be looking over my shoulder for a long time to come.